general manager of your San Francisco 49ers, back here on the Rich Eisen Show, John Lynch. How are you, John Lynch?
I'm doing all right, Rich. It's this time of year is always an exciting one, and we're certainly filled with excitement and excited about our prospects. But there's life too, Rich, and I think everybody knows that we awoke to sobering news of what happened in our community down in Gilroy. So heavy hearts here. In the midst of a lot of excitement, but our team, Kyle did a great job addressing our team this morning, just to keep these people in your hearts and in your minds, and heavy hearts in our community with what happened in the horrific tragedy in Gilroy.
Yeah, well said, John. I believe it has been confirmed a 6-year-old boy lost his life at the Garlic Festival that was being held there in Gilroy. 6 years old, which is absurd. Coach addressed this with the team today. You're saying,
John?
He
just felt that we're going to do a moment of silence out here before practice, and you always want to over communicate to your players, and these players are people as well, and they all have it on their hearts, and so. I think Kyle does a tremendous job of that, and it's just right before I got on with you, Bob Lang, our public relations director, showed me a picture of the father of this 6-year-old, and there he is in a Jimmy G jersey, and so it's just the link, and but I think what people forget is that we're all people, we all have families, and so everybody's heart is heavy today throughout the nation, but particularly here in our community.
Well, I'm glad you said something about that. John Lynch, San Francisco 49ers GM, joining me here on the show. You mentioned Jimmy G. Let's go to it right here. Any worse to wear? What are you seeing? What are you noticing, John?
Well, he's doing outstanding. His recovery has been just exemplary. I have found over my years as a player around tremendous athletes that, the really special athletes, the gifted guys, tend to heal quicker as well. And Jimmy certainly did that, and you have to give him a lot of credit with the vigor he attacked his rehab with. He did a really nice job, and so I think, knock on wood, he's done a tremendous job thus far. There's been no restrictions thus far in the first couple days of training camp. Today we put pads on, so these are all steps that he'll have to take. But he's doing a really nice job, and I think he and our coaching staff did a nice job. He's a guy we all know needs to play football. Any quarterback you talk to, you can talk it, you can put it on a board, you can watch film, and that's all great, but you have to play it. And so our challenge last year was, how do we try to simulate him playing, because he hasn't had a ton of game action without him playing. And the answer is you can't ever do that, but we needed to do the best job possible. And so Kyle and his staff were incredibly creative coming up with ways to do that, and Jimmy really embraced that. And so here we are, and excited to have him back.
Have we talked to him about getting out of bounds, John? Have we done that?
that discussion has been had on all levels, and I think he gets that.
So how does that go? Walk me through how that conversation actually was. It as simple as me just laying it out there? Did you do that? I mean, what?
I left it to Kyle because I felt like at a certain point, number one, I guess it is. I guess that could cross over into my job, but I let the coaches do the coaching, and I think Kyle said it rather emphatically, and it's part of I think it's part of what you love about Jimmy, and that's why his teammates all have his back. He's a tremendous teammate, but there is a point where you just got to be smart, and I think that point has been hammered home, and we look forward to seeing that happen.
All right, now let's talk about some other guys who missed some time last year due to injury, and that includes your top choice in the draft, Nick Bosa. How is he looking now, John? I mean,
he's looked extraordinary.
Okay.
Throughout our offseason, he did have a little hiccup with his hammy. He strained it in the OTAs, but he's come back, and we're managing him, making sure that it's 100%, and building him back into the action. But from day one, he was doing at this level what we anticipated that he would do, what he always did in college, and that's when he's on the field, he wins. And whether it's the run game, the pass game, he's a very complete and polished football player. And I think the thing that's always nice when you expect something from a guy like that, and then he comes out and does it. And he's got a lot of work to do. He knows that. But I think the thing we're really proud of him and expected as well is that he'd be he'd be welcomed by his teammates, and I think that's the thing that we heard from the teammates at Ohio State, and it has quickly happened here. The guys really enjoy him, and the person that he is as well, and so we're really happy about that. Nick's doing a tremendous job.
Why do you got to bring up how much you won in college to me, John? Why do you got to do that?
No, I'm talking personally, and as a team. But
all right, I
remember we were at Rose Bowl.
I thought you were very good. I don't understand.
We were at Rose Bowl practice. This was actually something where and Nick Bosa happened fortuitously to show up. We were down watching Ohio State. They've got obviously a ton of talent. And Adam Peters, our vice president of player personnel, was with me, and Nick happened to be there. And this first time he had been around his team, and Adam asked, as we often do, hey, who were some of the toughest guys you played against in your college career? And he looked like kind of deadpanned at Adam and said, I don't know how much film you watched of me in college, but I didn't lose many rushes.
Yeah.
So it was just straight up, and I said, he's right. He's got a point.
Yeah. How quickly did you put his name in after Kyler Murray was selected?
Pretty quickly. By that point, we were very convicted.
Yeah.
It was a tough choice. There was another defensive lineman, Quinnen Williams, who was an extraordinary player, and we had them both as dominant football players and really had an equal grade. Our team needed an edge presence aside from on the other side of D Ford is a guy who we traded for, a very productive player, and I think those two are going to add a ton, and so he just fit for us and handed it in very quickly.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's amazing, isn't it, that one team chooses who they hope to be their quarterback of the future, leaving the guy who you hope to put that quarterback of the future on his behind every single time you face him. It's amazing how the draft can work like that, John, huh? Isn't that amazing?
It really is. It really is. And, I think we were convicted regardless of who Arizona took, unless that guy was Nick Bosa. And there was some intrigue there, but we had a feeling that it was going to be Kyler, and it's a great challenge. You look in our division now. You got Goff, you got Russell Wilson, and you got Kyler, who's coming in here, and it's going to make for some fun football.
It is the NFC West, no doubt about it. John Lynch, general manager of the 49ers, and the button you pushed last year, I liked a lot. When you take somebody who's been trying to get on the field and prove that he is an every down back, that you can depend upon him on first, second, and perhaps third down, that you want to give that guy the opportunity. And Jerick McKinnon, I thought that him and Jimmy G, and then obviously you didn't even get a single snap out of McKinnon last year. How is he? He's on PUP right now. Are we going to see him, you think, in September,
I think we'll
John?
be seeing him here soon. We kind of shut him down for a week. He had a flare-up, as often happens in these ACL recoveries. Has had a really nice recovery. I think he's ahead of Jimmy in terms of when the injury happened, and people are saying, well, why is Jimmy on the field and he isn't? I think the nature of the position, running back, those legs better be right. It's very reactive. You've got to really put your foot in the ground and cut and such, and so we've been extra diligent and patient in allowing Jerick to have that time, and then he did have a little flare up here at the end. We kind of put him in a program where he rested for a week, then we'll ramp him back up. And I think, in the second, at the end of the first week of August, we anticipate having Jerick back on the field. You put him in a backfield with, Tevin Coleman, Matt Breida, and we feel like we have a ton of options along with Kyle Juszczyk, our fullback. So, we feel real good about that position and really excited about having a guy we really were counting on last year and unfortunately never got the chance to get him on the field. But Jerick will be a big part of us.
John Lynch, 49ers GM here on the Rich Eisen Show. Okay, were you in favor of the change for replay to include pass interference, offensive and defensive pass interference, as somebody who obviously played a position as you did, and now you're in the position that you are in right now? Were you in favor?
To be honest, and this is kind of a weak answer, but I had mixed emotions because you watch something like that, which happened in New Orleans, and of course you don't want that to ever happen again. But I also knew from having been around this league sometimes when you do something like this, you open up Pandora's box, and where does it stop, and what are the unintended consequences? And I think this is a big material change, and everybody's sitting here now. It's the way it is, thinking, okay, how is this going to play out? And how are coaches going to save so that at the right time they can go throw that flag? And it's going to be really interesting. Now, the good thing from experience is, I think you've seen it over the years, I've seen it over the years. Typically something like this, you think it's going to be a huge deal, and it doesn't typically play out to be that fundamental of a change. I'm hoping that's the case, and I'm hoping it can help prevent a situation, but I think only time will tell, and we're all sitting back and still trying to figure out exactly what this means.
Yeah, the unintended consequence, what it looks like to me, John, is going to be when you open up replay to review something, then anything that's allowed to be reviewed gets reviewed.
Yes.
And fans thought, let's put this in here to avoid another NFC Championship game from happening. That's cool. But when suddenly, they're looking at 12 men on the field, and then the play later on, it's not 12 men on the field, so the play stands as called. But we noticed looking at the all 22, somebody pushed off. And then suddenly you're like, well, where did this pass interference play come into bearing? Like, what happened here? And that's the unintended consequence. Certainly, if it happens in the fourth quarter of a game, it's going to drive some people nuts. So I'm wondering what will happen then. That's my issue.
So am I, and I've been privy to a lot of these meetings, and I think the league. I appreciate the honesty, but I'm kind of like, well, we better figure this out, because I've heard a lot of different versions of what it is. I've heard, hey, this is only to prevent something like what happened in New Orleans, but the standard rule in replay is exactly what you've said. Once you open that, everything's under review. So, but I am hoping it's some version of something that is obvious. Kyle Shanahan, I think, has a great description. He happened to, be in Cabo when that NFC Championship was being played, and he said, I was with at a restaurant bar, and all the people in Mexico who had no idea of the rules of football, they knew that wasn't right. Like it should be something that obvious,
right,
and that should be overturned. But the ticky-tack stuff, let's leave that alone and let's just play.
Do you have a conversation with Kyle about what his standard is going to be to throw the flag? Or, I mean, is there like...
Yeah, we're having a lot of those conversations, and he is with his staff, and, I think, that's going to be part of the strategy, and I think that's going to be fun to see play out. And so, and I think, again, going back to experience, you never really know, and I think oftentimes we build it up. This is going to be a huge change in football, and then it really isn't. And so I'm hopeful that that's the case, and that it really is for those few circumstances that are really materially changed the game. But I don't have the answer on that right now. But yeah.
Well, take off the suit and put the business card away. What would John Lynch, the Pro Bowl player, have thought about this?
As a defensive guy, I probably thought it was garbage. Yeah. One thing I figured out early, I remember Herm Edwards saying, Lynchburg, because I could be, the back judge as a safety. You were back there with him a lot. And he used to say, if you just nice to that guy back there, if you call him, imagine if you went back there and these guys are getting yelled at, getting called all kinds of names, you just say, hello, how's your family? And you say their name. Hi, Rich, how you doing? How's your family? You have no idea how long that will go. And it took me about till year 4 or 5, and took Herm Edwards to tell me. And I used that the rest, and they usually treated me really well back there.
A few more minutes left with John Lynch here on the Rich Eisen Show. Okay, speaking of family, what do you think it's going to be like on Saturday when Pat Bowlen gets enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canada?
I think it's going to be tremendous. And, I think everybody's only wish is that Pat could be here to experience it. He was a tremendous owner. I got to play in Denver for 4 years, and Pat was really the impetus for that happening. I used to run up to him skiing. I wasn't supposed to be skiing, but I always did, and used to see him up in Beaver Creek, and we started having conversations about perhaps someday joining the Broncos, and that that ended up with me being there and him telling me I no longer could ski. And so many great memories.
Is that right? Is that right?
He's awesome. I mean, he waited till I signed my contract and said, "Hey, it's been great seeing you up in the mountains all these years. By the way, you're no longer allowed to do that." So,
get off the skis.
Yeah, but he was great because, Rich, he gave you every resource that you needed to win. He was always around, but he let people do their jobs. And, you know, he was a unique owner. We'd do a college pool. Greek, Steve Ananopoulos, who's actually presenting him, the longtime trainer in Denver, would pick 5 or 6 guys every year. Every Thursday we'd be in Greek's office and the college pool, and Mr. Bowlen was part of that. And it took some time for me to get it, you know, because your owner being there talking trash to you about your picks, and then he loved if you'd fire right back at him. And he's just a tremendous owner. The winning speaks for itself, and long overdue. And he, along with my old teammate Champ Bailey, who another guy, you knew he'd be a first ballot. They got that one right, and really happy for those guys along with the entire class.
What made Champ so good, John?
Genes. He had a great gene pool.
Right.
There's guys at this level you're playing with the greatest athlete, but there are the Barry Sanders, the Deion Sanders, the Champ Baileys that are just a little bit different. And Champ was a guy who, and then on top of that, mixed this incredible athleticism that was like a high 4.2 guy, a 43-inch vertical leap with an incredible will to be great. And, I remember when I first really started respecting Champ Bailey as a football player. I was in the Pro Bowl, and typically in the Pro Bowl, people didn't like hitting, particularly cornerbacks and guys that even would during the season. And I remember Champ mixing it up there when I was on the same team with him and saying, man, I could play with this guy. And eventually I got that opportunity. He could do anything you asked. He could have played offense and played it at a high level had he been given the opportunity in the NFL. And just one of those superior athletes and a tremendous competitor as well.
Well, and just to wrap this up, John, you as somebody who worked in TV for a while too before taking this gig that you currently have with the Niners, probably knows Pat Bowlen was beyond influential in the television side of things for the NFL, and without question, NFL Network would never have existed if it wasn't for Pat Bowlen. He was
you
a million%.
And, on all those committees, and there's certain people that, Jerry Jones and Robert Kraft, we hear about all the time. Pat, you didn't hear about as much, but you talk to people within the league, and they talk about his imprint on this league and the success that we're having as a league. Pat Bowlen's imprint is all over this league, and that's really cool because he was a great man as well and a terrific owner.
Cool is a perfect word for him, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. That's what he was.
Shades, either in some sort of leather or fur at certain times, depending on the decade. I mean, John, you are a first-rate class act. You're going to be in that room with them as well one day. That's going to happen, and I appreciate in the interim you just joining the show as much as you have.
Thanks, Rich. I appreciate it.
Let's chat again soon. That's at John Lynch 49ers.
For more of The Rich Eisen Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV for free on BR Live or download the Rich Eisen Show app.